What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Manor. This is your bi-weekly show that we get down people from the community on the show and have a conversation about five movies that represent them in the best way possible. And I'm very excited to have the next guest on here. My second Schmodown competitor. God, Finstock Exchange person himself. By the way, theme song was very good. I enjoyed it.
Thank
I
you,
don't
thank
know if
you.
you saw my tweet, but I tweeted about it. It was great.
A lot of a
And
lot of people tweeted about it.
Andrew Dimalanta, I'm very excited to have you on here and talk about these five movies. Are you excited to be here?
Yeah, I am. Any opportunity I can talk about any kind of movies is awesome. I'm a big Star Wars guy. Just looking at my my setup and like my experience with the Schmodown. But everybody seems to forget that I'm a movie guy as well. That's what draws me to the movie trivia Schmodown. I used to do movie reviews on my channel. I has since gone away from that, but movies have been a big part of my life. I want to be a filmmaker, so it's just one of my strongest passions besides Star Wars. Obviously Star Wars is the reason why I got into filmmaking, but movies have always been a big thing for me.
That's awesome. So I always love when you hear the outside perspective of everybody, and they're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
this is why I actually got into watching movies and stuff like that." And of
Mhm.
course, my co-pilot, if you will, tonight, Malcolm Lay. How are you doing, good sir?
I'm doing good. Just really glad to be here again and talk to Andrew again. So,
It's always good to have people that you have recurring on the show, and it's always great.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into it. The first movie you gave me on your list of five was Return of the Jedi.
Hmm.
Now, I always have the view and the view that usually people fall into two camps: Empire or Jedi. And I was a little surprised that Jedi I
Yeah.
was the one that you gave me.
Hmm.
So I guess my first question, who introduced this film to you?
Like most people my age, fans my age, I got into Star Wars. I was introduced to Star Wars by my parents. So I got introduced to the original trilogy all at once. So I watched all three of them all at the same time, I believe. Another show, they asked like, what's your experience with Star Wars? Why you love Star Wars? Um, I was introduced to the trilogies on Betamax. I lived in Washington State at the time, and snow days were a thing back then, and they still are. So one of the things that I did during snow days, my mom set me in front of the TV, popped the Betamax in, and I'd sit there for hours at a time just watching the movies over and over again. And and just to clarify, Return isn't my favorite Star Wars film. It's actually number four on my list. The only reason I put Return was because it was my childhood favorite, and to look at me as a Star Wars fan, I lean more towards the Return of the Jedi type of mindset than Empire. But Empire is my favorite, so that's why I added that to the list. Because if you want to look at me like a Star Wars fan, you don't look at me as like the way people look at Empire. It's the way that sort of people look at the Return of the Jedi. That's kind of the Star Wars fan I am.
That's an interesting take on it.
Mhm.
I definitely enjoy that take very much, because I definitely, when I was a kid, I think I'd lean towards Return 2,
Mhm.
just because when you're watching, it's like the really cool kind of like special effects that come into it towards the end of the
Yeah.
movie. The
Mhm.
Ewoks. There's always I don't know how much you know about How I Met Your Mother. I don't know. I always like that reference,
Mhm.
but Barney has that reference of people before born before a certain time likes
Yeah.
likes the Ewoks, and then people
Yeah.
born. Yeah, it's great. Um, my next question for you, about this movie. What was your favorite time, maybe introducing someone, seeing the reaction to it? What was your favorite reaction? Who was your favorite person to like
Um,
kind of introduce this to?
Well, it was kind of hard to introduce new people because growing up, these films have been around. They were around before I was even born. So introducing it to people was like, yeah, like people are aware of Star Wars. They know these movies so much. So really, the only person that I've had to actually introduce this movie to is my wife. She was aware of Star Wars. She maybe had seen it like once before it was a requirement that she sit down and watch all the Star Wars films before she married me. That was kind of a requirement for her. But yeah, it was just like introducing her to the film was a big part because it's something that I'm so passionate about. And you know, obviously her being, you know, getting married and sharing common interests was a big part. It's a big part of marriage. Anybody, you can ask anybody about that about marriage. It's just I didn't want it to be a thing that, like, you know, oh, it's just that nerdy thing that my husband watches. It's like and actually getting into the films, she's, especially with me helping me study, she's gotten reacquainted. She's looking at the films differently now, and the first time watching her, she's like, okay, I can see why you like this, you know, space wizards and lightsaber fights and space battles, and, you know, Ewoks were pretty cute stuff for her too. So, you know, and I can't remember the first time she watched it. The first time she actually watched it, I think she was like kind of like zoning out, like, okay, again, there's this nerdy thing that my boyfriend likes. But then, you know, as time went on, she's like, okay, so I can see why you love this so much. I can see why you know, you're such a big fan of it. And she's more, she when we got married, she was more of a casual like fan of it. But then the further you know, the years go on, we get into the movie Trigger Schmodown, and now she likes to talk to me about my theories about Star Wars, and she has her own theories about Star Wars as well. So, and I think the Return of the Jedi was one that she enjoyed the most out of the original trilogy. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, again, and it's just that one. I think the Return of the Jedi speaks to more casual fans than Empire does, because, you know, the Empire ends on like such a dark note, and like, oh my God, Darth Vader is Luke's father. That's so crazy. But then Return is more that happy like ending, and I think that that might be why she liked Return better than Empire. I could be wrong. I never actually had
you never know.
Yeah, I never had an actual deep conversation about this with her, but yeah.
I think that's something that's great. I've actually, when I was listening to your podcast, I I was listening to the episode that you guys were talking about when you had the movie list that she had to go through and watch like 17 movies or something like that.
Well, it was the Star Wars prequel and an original trilogy. Then there's like 7 others that me and my best friend and my brother all came up with this list. Like, you have to watch these movies before, because this is back when like I was seeing every movie, and I was really into, like, I was at that height of my seeing every single film and being into filmmaking and all that. So it's at the height of like of my powers, basically. I think at this point I would have been able to compete in the singles division. I have since fallen off that sort of status, but yeah, it was just like, I think Memento was on there, Drive was on there, and a handful of other, like, you have to see these movies, because she's notorious for not having seen some classic films, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. You know, so we know that this kind of represents your childhood.
Yes.
You know, very much so of why you put Return on the list instead of like Empire.
Yeah, it's my childhood favorite.
So, you know, deep diving a little bit more into that, what does this mean to you for as a movie? You know, why does it represent you on your 5?
It's more mostly like that. Again, like, if you want to pick out a movie that defines me as a Star Wars fan. Yeah, there was a lot of movies. I think to get off that last question, it took us like, I want to say over a month to watch all the movies that were on the list. So I got, but back to your original question, like, Return again. I said that if you want to look at me as a Star Wars fan and pick out one movie that represents me as a Star Wars fan, growing up, it was Return of the Jedi. I quoted that movie so many times. One of my favorite scenes is when Vader and Luke are talking on Endor before he takes them up to the Death Star. I have no idea why, but that just resonates with me so much. It's just the you know, the whole good triumph from evil. Not everybody's really on, because Vader comes back, and the love for his son brings him back. It's just all these things that that really I love this film so much. And it's I know, like, a lot of people use the word nostalgia in like a negative context. Nostalgia for me, for this film, is so powerful, because it immediately brings me back to those snow days in Washington, Spokane, Washington, of just that just little wide-eyed kid just looking at a TV screen, wondering like, oh man, I wish I could be a Jedi. And like I tell the story all the time that like when you're in kindergarten and your teacher asks like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? People, all the boys in the class, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a fireman. Girls like, I want to be a princess. I want to be a Jedi. That was my answer. Like every single. So
I
like,
want to be Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly. And like lightsabers, it's everything about that film. It represents what I love about Star Wars. Space. We have yet to see a space battle rival the Battle of Endor, in my opinion. I mean, Scarif comes close to that, but really, the Return of the Jedi Battle of Endor is like it's like the pinnacle of Star battles for me. So like what this movie really means to me is just my childhood, basically. Like it immediately brings me back to like I used to when my mom was working in her office at the family business, and it was summertime, so she couldn't really leave us at home. I remember me and my brothers would go and get the legal paper. They were like the extra long ones, and we'd roll them up and then tape them and then draw our lightsaber hilts and use the highlighter to color the blades, and we'd use that as lightsabers. So like when I think about Return of the Jedi, it's like it just brings me back to those like those days of just me being a kid and playing lightsabers and doing all that stuff. So.
But I think that's kind of a great way to look at this. You gave me like essentially your childhood wrapped up in a movie, which is I think when I wanted to create this show, I wanted that. I wanted people to look at these movies and realize, oh, this is why I'm a movie fan. This is what started my journey. And I think that's a great way that you started this kind of journey with Return of the Jedi, and leading into our next movie, which is The Force Awakens.
Surprise, another Star Wars movie.
Surprise, another Star Wars movie. But guys, it's not all Star Wars movies, I promise.
No, it's not.
So I'm sure that no one introduced this movie to you because you were probably one of the first in lines, as was I. I bought my tickets the day they went on sale. I bought like 15 tickets, like me and my friends, separate days. I had to go with different ones. You know how you have like, you're sitting in the theater and there's like the one friend that you can go and watch movies with, and then there's the friends that you can't watch movies with, but you have to go with them still. I have groups like that. But I mean, it's obviously it's because we haven't had a movie since the prequel, so that's why it's kind of important to come out to this. But I guess I'll start a little bit different. Who was maybe a few people that you brought with you that were at the original showing with you? You know, why were they
for Force Awakens?
Yeah, for Force Awakens during opening night. Who were the people that you brought?
So we this actually started it kicked off a tradition for me, a group of fans, because obviously, I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan. I'm the one that we bought 10 tickets. I had 3. I've told this story many times. I had 3 laptops in front of me at the time, and like I was just refreshing each computer on Fandango. Like, oh, when did they go on? When did they go on? And we finally got our tickets, and we bought 10. And whoever wanted to come with us came with us, and it became a tradition with us because every year there was a Star Wars movie come out. So it was me, my wife, and then a couple of other fans. 2 of my friends were like, they liked Star Wars, but they weren't at my level of like diehard fans. But then everybody else was just like, oh, I'm aware of a Star Wars. I can go see a Star Wars, and it was just a surreal experience because I've never had an experience like this with The Force Awakens, like from when it was announced to when it was released. Just that whole lead up, I've never had this anticipation. I mean, I sort of had it with the Phantom Menace, but I was so young. I was like around 13, 12 or 13 when that movie came out. I'm kind of dating myself right now, but
sorry, I was 12 when it came out, so you're good.
So, we're around that age, like preteen, teenage. So like you don't know as much. You're not like as entrenched as we are in it now. But like this is the first time I ever like followed the movie, looking for every single little nugget. It's just like any news that came out on social media, I immediately lashed onto it. Oh, did you hear that this is happening? Oh, the teaser drops today. Let's wait online. Like, let me call out sick from work so I can refresh on my computer to see that. So it was just my fandom was at its highest with The Force Awakens, just leading up to the movie, buying the tickets, waiting up because The Force Awakens was the last time. I don't know how it is across the country anywhere else, but in Orlando, The Force Awakens was the last time I had to wait in line for my seat. After that, it was all reserved seatings. So that's the way
Yeah,
pretty much
no, it
all
was the
theaters
same
are
thing
now.
for us. I
Yeah.
took my brothers to go see this movie. We were waiting
Mhm.
in line to get seats. I made them come with me 2
Mhm.
hours, and I was like, "You guys stand in the line. I'll go get us dinner. We'll eat some McDonald's in
Yeah.
line and throw it out." Uh,
Yeah, so yeah, and that I'll never have that experience in because we bought the tickets and then, like it was like 11 in the morning. Our screening was 7 at night, and I'm like, it's 11 o'clock. Let me see if there is a line at all. And when we went to the theater, because they had already like started lines, there's 2 people in line already. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm waiting in line. So we sat down. We sent a dog to overnight, and we just stayed there. And just you think it's like, oh, just sit in line all day. It's like no, like as people came in, they're like, oh, you excited for the movie? What are your theories? And we're just talking Star Wars all day long. It's like it was such an amazing experience. And then like how the fandom is now, and it's just like well, I wish we can go back to the like pre Force Awakens, and even after Force Awakens, the fandom was still like kind of united, and there were those haters out there from Force Awakens, and just this and like that experience of just being around like those fans being excited for all the same thing is like I'll never ever have that experience. And it kind of it goes into how much I love the Force Awakens, second favorite Star Wars film in my list. And that experience that I had has a lot to do with it because of that just lead up to it, and that attitude that we had about Star Wars. And it's had that feeling of that feeling I hadn't had in a long, long time. Of Star Wars is back. Star Wars is here, and it's not just. And according to Disney, it's never going away anymore. So it was just, I'll never have that experience ever again. And as the as the movies came out, like it's sort of like, okay, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, and it's just like, okay, I wish we could just go back to that time
I
again.
I 100% agree with you. I think this was the last movie that I actually sat in
Mhm.
line and talked to fans, and
Yeah.
that were actually genuinely just happy to see the movie.
Mhm.
You know, not be divisive, not have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
I definitely am with you right there about the fandom, and wishing that we could kind of go back to where it was a
Mhm.
little bit more positive.
Yeah.
So the other 2 questions aren't really going to apply to this because you kind of had a group of people that you already introduced this to.
Yeah.
So let's switch it up. Um, do you hope that your kid has the same kind of experience that you have when you introduce them? I know I'm hitting
Yeah.
you with it, but I'm curious. Like, how are you going to introduce
I
your child to these movies?
I'm so like curious and excited to see it. Like I'm nervous that she won't like Star Wars, and I'll break my heart if she doesn't. I had this conversation with Christian Harloff when I debuted in Chicago, and I was like, "How did you do it? What are you giving me tips on it?" Like, and he's like, he immediately turned to my wife Nikki and goes, well, "What does she think of it? What do you think of it?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm cool with it. I love Star Wars." And like, well, you're golden. So because it's my first kid. She's gonna be 2 in a couple months, and like he said, like, well, it's this thing that I hope it's like, well, mommy and daddy love Star Wars. I want to have that same feeling. I want to watch what they like, and I want to like what they like, and I'm hoping that's what it is. And I hope the fact that our daughter's middle name is Ray, I'm hoping that kind of like stilts her a little bit. It's like, look, this is the character we need. We gave you your name, your middle name to. So that's kind of hoping, and I just hope so, and I think it will. I think what I'm going to end up doing is probably introducing her with episode 7 first, and then going through the sequel trilogy because like it's the A New Hope it's great, and like I think a lot of stuff, especially like the visual effects and stuff, still hold up. But then the further we're getting away from the A New Hope and that era of filmmaking and just the aesthetics and like the dialogue and like just like the quality of filmmaking, it's still a classic quality film. But when we compare it to the newer films coming out, like it's not as polished, and kids these days, I have no idea how the kids are going to be when she becomes of age to understand these films, what their tastes are going to be. So the further we get away from the original trilogy, like you're gambling on them being like um like accepting of old style filmmaking and like the old ways of looking at the world and looking at film. Because George Lucas said it the best. Like he doesn't make films to like, all right, I did Star Wars this way, let's go back to that old feeling. He made the films for the generations of that time. So A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi was great for that generation. But then when the prequels came out, you have to adjust your style of filmmaking because what speaks to one generation won't speak to another. And now we're seeing that again with the Force Awakens. Prequel era people are older now, and they love the prequels. They'll die on that hill. And I'm guaranteeing when the kids are introduced to Star Wars through the sequel trilogy, are going to have that same attitude. It's like, I love these things. I grew up with these things. So, and then we're going to have to change our mindset on what the generations, because it's the same stories essentially, just told in that generation's eyes. So I'm curious to see when she gets old enough to what Star Wars content is going to be out. And do I stick with the content that's there now, or do I go back and introduce her to the older films or the sequel trilogy or the prequel trilogy? It's just, there's so much Star Wars stuff, and I'm hoping that she latches onto something.
Yeah, as does I think every parent ever, that they have something that they can latch on with, and I think it'll be great.
And her godmother has a funny little joke that because her godmother is a hardcore Harry Potter fan, and she's like, I'm gonna turn your daughter against you. I'm gonna make her love Harry Potter. I'm like, no.
There's enough love for fandoms. There's enough love.
I know.
Getting into fandoms, when I saw this next movie on your list, I nearly had a heart attack because I was like, oh man, he is in my mindset. This is one of my favorite. People hate the third movie in this one, but I don't hate it as much because I grew up right around that time. I know it has its problems.
It has. I mean, the whole movie is problematic.
Yes.
But it's more of a nostalgia type. And then the word again, nostalgia comes into it. So.
And absolutely. And we're talking about the second movie in the trilogy, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. This movie, for me, was childhood. It literally, I think I started with this movie because I didn't see the first one in 90, but I saw the second one, and it was Pizza Hut that introduced me. Do you remember Pizza Hut, when Pizza Hut used to give the toys away?
Yeah, the Pizza Hut marketing was so great. It's like, what a great partnership. Like, it's like, you were gonna think of any other marketing partner for this franchise, it's like, no, it's Pizza Hut. So
because Domino's didn't have toys. In the first movie they had Domino's Pizza, but then in the second one they had like Pizza Hut and stuff like that, which was great. So let's jump off again with the starting question. Who introduced this movie to you?
I think it was my parents, obviously. I can't remember how old I was. I can't do math that quickly. How old I was when the second one. I do, and just so like my wife is obviously watching. Her favorite is the first movie, and I do agree the first movie is the better made film. Just coming from my filmmaker mindset, I do like the first one better than the second one. But again, the second film describes my childhood better than the first one. So that's why I put this on this list, because if there was two things that drove my childhood, it was Star Wars and Ninja Turtles. You could not go wrong with a Star Wars toy or a Ninja Turtles toy growing up for Christmas, birthdays, whatever. And it drove my love for martial arts, because me and my brothers and my mom are all martial artists. I've been doing Taekwondo since I was 6 or 7. I have since like. No, I'm out of practice. I've been out of practice for several years now, but like that's how me and my wife met, was through martial arts Taekwondo club at Central Florida here. So and that speaks so much to me as a kid growing up. Ninja Turtles, want to kick and fight like the Ninja Turtles. And I remember watching this movie, and with Ernie Reyes Jr. just kicking ass in this movie was so good. I'm like, oh my god! And I believe Ernie Reyes is Filipino. I could be wrong. Is he Filipino?
I will look it up real quick.
Please look it up. I don't want to look stupid, but I believe Ernie Reyes Jr. is Filipino, and my mom was excited to see someone of that, of that color to be represented, and especially if he's Filipino, it's like, oh, great, a Filipino martial artist that speaks so much to my boys, and like it was great. And the second film is definitely more kid friendly than the first. It's so much more confirmed. The first one is so dramatic, and it speaks to more to the adult crowd than the child crowd. So I think that's why it's so hot. This is why I submitted it, because like I keep going back to thinking like, what childhood? Two things, Ninja Turtles, Star Wars. I have to put Ninja Turtles 2 on there, because, and how do you not love Ninja Rap? Come on. Ninja Rap is so good. Oh yeah, absolutely. So like, I remember this is another movie that I've watched several times when I was younger.
Yeah, no, he is Filipino. Uh, yeah. So
Yeah.
you were right on the
Yeah.
money.
So yeah, that was a big, especially now that I'm older. That's a big point for my family, because we're all first generation Filipino. My parents came to this country when they were very young, and wanting that whole immigrant mindset of wanting a better life for my kids, and to have somebody like that on the screen to represent our culture, and especially being a martial artist, that was very big for me and my brothers, and for my mom as well.
That's awesome. Actually, a funny little thing that I just found out because I
Mhm.
was just looking at it. He actually was in the first movie as well as Donatello's martial arts stunt double.
Oh, fun.
That's a
Nice.
fun little fact.
Hmm.
I definitely think that's so that's awesome. I didn't know that about you, that you study martial
Hmm.
arts. That's a
Yeah.
really cool little fact.
Hmm.
So if you're in the throwdown, don't try to bully Andrew because he'll just roundhouse you to the face.
I actually had an entrance idea for, like, because I wanted to show off, like, out there on martial arts. I was gonna have like the picture of, or the name of my opponent on like a board, and I was just gonna like knife hand chop it and like break it on set. And I was like, I'd rather keep it to like Star Wars themed, since I'm a Star Wars competitor. So maybe down the road in a live event, maybe. That's just
That'll
something
be
in the back
sick.
of my mind. Yeah.
That'll be awesome. All right, so we now we kind of, you kind of answered both questions with
Hmm.
why it means so much to you,
Hmm.
it's very, I guess it's in your roots. Kind
Yep.
of push you to want to do it. I'm sure it pushed you to want to do it even more.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so the next question that I got for you is, what was what's I'm gonna flip it up a little bit because I want to just kind of keep it going, flow nice. What's one of your favorite scenes in this movie?
Oh man. Jeez. I mean, the opening scene is pretty rad. When Ernie Reyes reveals, like, because I think that's one of my favorites, is when the opening scene itself is great, when he's delivering the pizza, and then like the Foot Clan, or the goons, try to like jump him, and he just beats the crap out of all of them, and he does like a kip up, and he goes, "Did I forget to mention I studied martial arts?" And it's like, oh, that's so great. I mean, there's so many great scenes. The ninja rap scene is great. When they try to pull a fast one on Tokan Razar with the donuts, that's a great scene. I haven't seen this movie in so long, so it's hard to pick out just one scene. But it's a jumble of different things. Michelangelo using the what is it, the sausages for his nunchucks.
Yes,
It's just so much fun to watch this movie. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again, because there's just a handful of moments that I love about this movie.
absolutely. And I guess we'll go right into it. Of what was the favorite time of maybe introducing someone to this movie?
I don't remember if I introduced anybody to this movie, really. It's one of those movies where I just watched it with everybody that I've watched it with has already seen it. Because martial arts friends, they're like, "Oh yeah, cool, totally Ninja Turtles," and we'd all just sit down like sleepovers and watch Ninja Turtles because we're all familiar with it. So I don't really think I've introduced it to anybody. Because again, it's like one of those pop culture things that everybody's aware of. Like, oh, you're aware of Ninja Turtles, right? Oh yeah, I know Ninja Turtles. And it's like, did you watch The Secret of the Ooze? Like, oh yeah, totally. So it's just one of those things that's it's like Star Wars is ingrained in our pop culture and our culture, as especially people our age. It's like, oh yeah, I grew up with Ninja Turtles. You kidding me? I love it. So
Yeah, I don't think there's as much affinity for it now. A lot of people are,
yeah, it's
which
definitely, it's kind of dying with our generation, so to speak. But I think there's a strong like fandom with the comic books, I
I think
believe.
there is. Yeah, I think there's
Yeah.
still a fandom. I mean, they had that whole thing where Donatello died and came back.
Oh yeah, that's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
yeah, so it was big. Um,
Mhm.
so let me ask you right off the bat, who's your favorite and why are they your favorite?
Raphael is my favorite. Red is my favorite color, and that it had
Okay.
a lot to do with it. But yeah, I think he reflects me as a person really, really, to like a T, and that he's very passionate. He's very, lets his emotions get the best of him most of the time, and that's totally me in a nutshell. Like I'm a very like, you meet me, you can tell I'm a very passionate person. Several people that have known me over the years say, like, Andrew wears his emotion on his sleeve. He's very like, it's very like, what you see with Andrew is what you get. There's no not like, you don't have to like, peel back the layers and like get me out of my box. It's like, once you get me out of my box, that's it. That's Andrew. So and he, he's fairly hot headed, and it's hard to keep his emotions in check sometimes, and that's pretty much me for the most part. But I also like, size are a really cool weapon that I liked. My younger brother liked Michelangelo, my older brother liked Leonardo, and we had a friend that was Donatello. So when we would all play together, we all had the four turtles together. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
pretty.
it was a nice balance.
I was always torn between Leo and Mikey, just
Yeah,
because Mikey's comedy was always on point, always on point.
yeah.
Uh, and pretty much always on point. I'm I'm super excited that we're getting through the list, and we're finding these things. Like I said, we find these things about people that we didn't necessarily know,
Mhm.
and I think it's really cool that you kind of connect with Raphael on that level, that you kind of wear your heart on the sleeve, and I think that's really
Yeah, and yeah.
indignant of a person, and really it kind of
Mhm.
shows who they are. I always
Yeah,
love that
and
when you
it's
find
like
out.
and I've been finding with myself, like, just deep diving into these movies sometimes and talking about them, like, I'll like, especially with the Star Wars, and just now talking about this, I find like I have a childhood favorite that represents my childhood, but then as my tastes evolve, like, then I have this, I either switch to a different movie for as like my all time favorite, or then I find a different level of to this character, this movie, that I never knew that that's why I was so like drawn to that aspect. So I'm like, because like again with Raphael, red was my favorite character. Okay, he wears a red band, so that's my favorite character. But then as the years go on, I'm like, yeah, he really, like, we have so much in common, of that, passionate, hot-headed type of person. So like that's just one thing that, as looking back on movies and things like that, I surprise myself sometimes with it, and just the way I look at things.
I think those are the best kind of surprises when you
Hmm.
go and reevaluate those things. You
Hmm.
loved in your childhood, and you're like, oh, I do connect with that character more so because of the actual
Hmm.
character. I think
Yeah.
it's a great thing. Moving on to your next film, when I got your list, I was like, okay, all right. We got Singing in the Rain.
Yes. Yes.
So this was an interesting pick. Not to say that I didn't think you like musicals,
Hmm.
or not saying that I didn't think you like classics,
Yeah.
but I was like, I was not expecting that, and it was a pleasant surprise, because I was like,
Hmm.
it's one of my favorite classic musicals as well. So I was like,
Yes.
that's so awesome. So now again, it's probably your parents that introduced you to, but give me a
Yes.
little bit of backstory about how they introduced this film to you.
So it's just one of those things where, it was one of my mom's favorite movies growing up, and like they would put it on. I'm like, oh, let me sing, and the music was like nice and, like, fun, and it has some legends in there. It's my favorite musical of all time. There's several others, but like, when I look back, it's like musicals. First thing to pop in my head is Singing in the Rain, and because my mom always used to come into my room when I was younger and wake me up with "Good morning, good morning." And it's like, oh, that's fun, and it's from that movie. So it's just a fun little thing that my mom used to do, and like, people always forget. It's like, oh, Andrew's a Star Wars guy. Star Wars guy. That's all he loves is Star Wars. It's like, no, I'm a movie guy too. I love classics, and Singing in the Ring is one of my all-time favorite classic films. Casablanca's in there as well. Not Nightmare on Elm Street. Sunset Boulevard. Just movies like that, like things I would love growing up, and then I get to college and we have to study these movies. I'm like, oh, geez, okay. And then you get aware, and like there's so much like trivia in it. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the main character's the actor's name. Oh god,
Gene Kelly.
Gene Kelly. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and that whole he's got a flu game. He did that whole famous scene when he had the flu and he was sick, and it's like this things like that. I was like, oh my god, this is filmmaking. This is so filmmaking. People sacrifice their bodies and all that, and for the love of movies. So this is absolutely what this movie represents for me, and like that old classic like genre of film, and like we studied this movie in film school because of that whole transition from non-talkies to talkies, and that's what this movie represents, and people struggled to adapt to that, and I think that's another reason why I love watching this movie, is because like we see these sort of things in film nowadays, with the whole thing with performance capture and CGI, and just all these things start to evolve over time with filmmaking, and this is just a small portion. There's like the one like big moment in filmmaking where like, oh, actors have to talk now. So it's just one of those things. Again, it's another one of those things where I love this movie growing up, and then we're forced to study it in school, and it brings out a whole different dynamic for me. So that's one of those things that I love about this movie.
That's awesome. I think it's really great when you find like I said, I know that we were going to get Star Wars on this list, but I think it's really great when you get these nuggets of things that
Mhm.
mean something to somebody. Like
Mhm.
finding out that your mom sang that to you, wake you up every
Yeah,
morning
and
was
I can't.
it's great. That's honestly it's great.
Yeah, and I don't remember if it was me or one of my friends. I think it was one of my friends that said that his mom did the same thing, and he would sing it to her, and he never saw her sing in the rain. And then when he finally saw Sing in the Rain, he was like, "What? I thought you made that song up. What are you doing?"
Mom, why are you
It's just
not
so
telling me this?
yeah, and it is in Singing in the Rain is a film that both me and my wife were aware of before we met, and this is one of her favorite musicals, if I'm mistaken, and it's just one of those things that we watched it, like date nights. So like, oh, let's watch an old movie. Let's watch Singing in the Rain because we both love the movie, and it's just it's always nice to see a movie that we both like that I didn't have to introduce her to because
It's
she
always a
has this
plus,
pocket.
right?
Yeah, she has this pocket of films that she loved, like this, West Side Story, Grease, and a couple other movies like those classic films. But like, it's always nice to have like a movie that we both enjoy that I didn't have to like because there's this and I know there's this list of movies that she had to watch, but there's other movies too. Like we both have to sit through the Harry Potter movies that we haven't seen all of them. She refuses to watch Lord of the Rings, which is just like a stab to the heart for me. But it's just nice to have like this era of filmmaking and era of films that we both enjoy and both love to watch. So that's another plus for to have this on this list for me.
That's awesome. All right, so we know why this movie means a lot to you. I mean, it has kind of that sentimental value, not only just for
Mhm.
like your mom, but also has like college where you were studying, where you kind of like
Mhm.
learned how to like expand on the knowledge of learning about these films,
Mhm.
which I think is great. Um, I don't want to necessarily go with who you introduced this with, and we kind of know another person that you love to share this movie with.
Mhm.
Outside of that, I mean, what's some of your favorite moments in this movie?
Um. Obviously the Good Morning song. I mean, there's a whole. I think one of my favorite moments, and this is something that my wife shares with me as well.
So she sent you a couple
Time to-
messages.
Yeah, she is a huge arachnophobe. So when it gets to Return of the King with the whole, she loves seeing the spider. She will. I think that's a big reason why she refuses to watch it. But as far as Singing in the Rain goes, the moment when it's revealed that I haven't seen this movie in a while, so like I'm blanking on names. The very end when they reveal that the person on screen is singing for somebody else, and she goes to run off, and he starts singing to her, and she turns around, tears in her eyes. I'm like, oh, because I'm a huge softie. And especially now that I have a daughter, I've become more prone to crying in movies, and this is one of those moments where it's like you want to see Andrew cry in a movie, put the scene on and Sing in the Rain because it's just like, oh God, it's that whole like movie romance of like that whole starstruck romance, romanticizing love and this like that whole era of film is like there's moments that the lighting gets so soft on her when it was harsh before, and it's just I think that's one of my favorite scenes. I think another one is when they first start to try to like adapt to speaking, and they have to hide the microphone in certain places. They hide it in the plant one time, and she turns away from the microphone, turns back to it, and it's like it loses her voice. It's like you have to make sure to talk to the plant because the microphone's here. And then it's like, well, let's put it in the his lapel or something like that. They hide it in like a brooch or something, and she like knocks on his hit the brooch, and it's like hitting the microphone. It's just moments like that. It's like, it's so good. So yeah, it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where there's not one specific scene that I love. It's just it's a collection of moments and things like that I like.
Yeah, I think that's like I've been saying, like the whole since the show, since the concept of the show, kind of since I came up with the concept of the show, um, it's always interesting, like I said, to deep dive into these things because you never know what you're gonna get from a person.
Mhm.
Like singing the rain for you, you expanding from childhood to now. It's now a date night movie for you and your wife.
Mhm.
Uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. It represents your childhood. It also represents a kind of a character that you kind of
Hmm.
is a Kendrick
Yeah.
spirit,
Hmm.
Force Awakens, it's something that you're hoping to show your daughter down the line and
Hmm.
that she gets it because her middle name,
Middle
Ray.
name is Ray. Yeah.
And then Return of the Jedi is your ultimate childhood movie. It takes you back to
Yeah.
snow days. There's movies that for me, I live in Jersey. There's movies for me that take me back to those real winter days that we had.
Hmm.
We don't have them anymore, but the real winter days that we had. And it's like, this is why I created this show. I want to find out a person without giving traditional interview questions, and I think
Yeah.
it's great to learn that. But we are coming up to your last movie. Today was a little bit of a faster movie going through, but I think it's because you kind of were like open right from the beginning, and it was nice flow of a conversation.
Hmm.
But coming up, it's a big movie. It's a
Yeah.
huge movie. It's the end of 22 films. Uh,
21, 22. Yeah.
Avengers
Avengers Endgame.
Endgame.
Hmm.
So obviously, again, we can't ask the traditional questions that I ask here, but let's deep dive into it. So going from Force Awakens to now, this is kind of the same fandom.
Yes. Yeah.
There's
Essentially the
differences,
same. Yeah.
essentially the
Yeah.
same. So you know, who were some people that you were excited to share this end of a
Um.
saga with?
Oh man, I mean, I think I only went with me and my wife for this one because again, the reason me and my friends went to Force Awakens all together, and we continued to for the Star Wars film because it was a sort of tradition, and Star Wars is this huge pop culture thing that all you know everybody's aware of, and that whole Force Awakens thing. Star Wars is back. This one had a different sort of feeling to it. It wasn't like the beginning of something. It was more an end of something, and I believe it was only me and my wife that went to go see this one. No, actually, I think I went to go see this one myself first, and then I went the week after. Yeah, so I went by myself first, and then the week later, me and my wife saw it. Um, but it was just different. It's because it's a culmination of so many movies, and it's a different. Obviously it's a geek property, but it's just this thing that it grew over time for everybody, and it's just one of those things where not all my friends were MCU fans. Some of them, the reason they went with us to Star Wars because obviously that huge attachment, and then I'm not as outwardly like geeky about these films as I am with Star Wars, but I'm still a huge MCU fan. And if I'm not watching Star Wars, I'm watching MCU movies obviously because of Disney Plus now. But yeah,
It's a big help.
yeah, it's a big help having those on there. But yeah, it was just like because the thing with the MCU is like you might not like all of the movies. Like sometimes it's a whole array of films that are made by different people. Black Panther's they're all essentially the same film, but with different spins on them. With Black Panther's vastly different from Ant-Man. Ant-Man's vastly different from Iron Man. And Guardians of the Galaxy is this weird property that people just lash onto because they had faith in Marvel. So yeah, going into this movie, I was just like, I had like a laundry list of things that I wanted to see because I hadn't seen it in a Marvel film thus far, and like I got all of it in the third act of the movie. I'm like, yes, this is the movie I wanted to see. This is what I wanted. Like Cap grabbing Mjolnir for the first time officially was one of the moments I wanted. Everybody wanted to hear Avengers Assemble, and and like it was just one of those things that I was so looking forward to. And I don't know, and just I think it was around the time when I was I still doing? I don't think I was doing reviews at this time. I think I might have stopped. Yeah, I stopped. My last movie review was Captain Marvel. I just couldn't swing it anymore because obviously having a kid really affects that. So I couldn't see movies as often. So, but when Endgame came out, I was like, all right, I need to go see this. I saw a matinee of it. I had my mother-in-law come over to babysit the baby. And I went, okay, I'm gonna go off and see Endgame for 3 hours. And then she did it again to when me and my wife went to go see it. So
That is awesome. So we know why you really enjoy this franchise.
mm,
What does Avengers Endgame mean to you? Um,
it's this shared it's a lot like Star Wars. It's this shared experience that everybody has that has sat through all these movies, and you immediately get it. Like it's like, hey, yeah, Endgame. Oh yeah, great movie. And you immediately connect with somebody with this movie, and there's that's really the only two properties, especially nowadays, that I get that experience with is Star Wars and Marvel films, because they're it's the hot thing right now. And it's just like we've all like seen it, and like you don't really get experiences like this in movies, especially like the more smaller independent films, like these big blockbusters. You don't get like people cheering and jumping out of their seats and like shared geekdom and this thing like
Yeah.
that. That's what these movies sort of mean, especially nerd fandoms, like especially with how the fandom is now with Star Wars. Like you're gambling when you're talking Star Wars with somebody now. It's like, do you like Last Jedi or do you hate Last Jedi? Are negative Nancy about the Rise of Skywalker, or do you love it like I do? With Marvel, it's like, yeah, I don't like Black Panther, but I can be down with Civil War. Ant-Man really didn't do it for me, but Guardians of the Galaxy, I was all for that, because like space battles and stuff like that. So it's just when you look at the MCU like as a whole, it's just this shared theatrical experience with all these fans, and it also, you might stem back to like comic books too. It's like you might run into somebody that's like, yeah, I got into MCU just because I love movies and I'm not familiar with the comic books. But then you might run into somebody else like, oh yeah, I've been a comic book fan since I was born. Like my dad read these comics to me. I'm familiar with all the off-ball brands and stuff. I knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy was before the movie came out. And it's just this unique shared experience. And when you run into friends like that, you might end up becoming lifelong fans because you have this love for this property, for these movies. And it's just this whole like culmination of these movies that I think it's just build up and just this shared experience that we have.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna go throw you a real question. I know probably the answer is, but the final scenes of this movie, right? It's been out long enough. If you haven't seen Endgame, it made over X amount of dollars.
Come on.
Don't at me. So, like how. For me, that end scene with Tony Stark and his daughter, it's like that's kind of culminates the entire film. That's Tony Stark in a nutshell. Like, who's a character that you kind of most attached to through this entire franchise?
For me, I believe it's Captain America. Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel hero, period. But for some reason, I gravitate towards Cap because I enjoy First Avenger more than the average person does. I think that's top 7, top 6 film in the MCU for me. I love the First Avenger. It's just the message of sense. Like, yeah, the serum enhances not just your physical aspect, but your spirit. And like the reason he was chosen is because he's not, he's not this prime example of like what the serum can do. It's because he's a good guy. Deep down, it's what makes him Cap. It's not the super serum that makes him special. It's not, the fact that it's his strength doesn't make who he is. It's his spirit. And like that great line of, I can do this all day. You can knock me down as many times as you want, but I'm going to get up regardless if I'm bleeding, if I have one leg. That's what really like speaks to me about Captain America. It's just like, he's this guy that no matter what you say to him, he's going to stand up for what he believes in. And deep down, what makes him special is he's a good guy. So that's really who I gravitate towards. And Captain America's shield is like the coolest thing in cinematic history. Like, I know I'm partial to lightsabers and X-wings, but I've always wanted to just throw a shield and have it come back to me. It's the coolest thing ever in movies to have an unbreakable shield, and it's so cool. So that's something that I love about Captain America.
No, I agree. I think Cap is probably one of the, I guess, closest version of how a human can evolve to be a better person.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with you. I think this film was an excellent choice because it kind of wraps up the end of an era, kind of.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where it's going to go from here.
They're basically hitting reset on all the MCU films now. Because like we have Black Widow coming out this what is it? It's
May.
April, May,
May, yeah.
May. Yeah, so it's a summer film. So that's the last piece of the old Avengers. And then after that, it's like anybody's guess because the Eternals are coming out. The next Spider-Man movie, who knows what's going to happen with that? Black Panther 2 is going to come out, but he's sort of a new guard, not an old guard type of thing.
Yeah.
So next Captain Marvel things come out. That's a new guard, not old guard. So it's kind of like, where do we take? It's anybody's guess from here. So like it's just like, yeah, like, if you stopped at Endgame, it's like, all right, that's a great conclusion. So like we have a great closing for these characters that we've known and loved. But you have all these other heroes that are around. But like we don't really need to see their story because we got the end of the story that we've been leading up to for the past like 10 years. So yeah, if you just told me like, yeah, Endgame is the last Marvel film we'll get, I'm sad, but that's a great place to end it on. So
I agree 100%. All right, let's take this last 10 minutes and go through the comments list. Garth McMurray's been hitting it up. He says, I think Andrew should share that movies you must watch list on Twitter. I'd be
the list
interested
is
to see.
somewhere. I don't know what we did with that list. I know, again, I think it was it was the Star Wars films. Memento was on there. Drive was on there. God, there's so many other movies. I don't think Inception was on there. Inglourious Basterds might have been on. It was this huge list of things. It was like 10. It was 10 films plus the Star Wars movies. So it was like 16 movies. So
it'd be an interesting list.
It would be.
You would probably start a new Twitter trend of movies you must watch list.
It was crazy going through those movies because like we had to watch all those movies. Planning a wedding too is crazy, but we were stupid and we bought our first house and we closed the day after our wedding. So there's this whole spill of things that we were doing. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like, God, so it was a crazy time for us.
Also, it'll be interesting to see how different your life would have been had the Lord of the Rings trilogy been on that list.
Oh God, yeah, that would be crazy to
do. Garth again hitting up the chat. Meanwhile, this old man saw the original trilogy when he was a kid. He was 9 when the original Star Wars came out.
Hey man, I envy you. I wanted the closest I'll ever get to that experience is Force Awakens. So,
which I think it's really cool. Yeah. Well, the original, the prequel trilogy, right? Too, because he was about 9. We were.
Yeah.
I was 12. Yeah. I know that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said that Cap has been his favorite since the 1970s, which is that's a move. 100%, and he has a Cap shield as a tattoo.
Oh, wow.
He also said that in the comics for the TMNT, they all wore red in the early comics.
Oh yeah, that's right. I believe I saw that somewhere.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I've had a ball with you on the show. I think this has been a really cool experience. I hope you've had fun.
I always enjoy coming on these shows, just talking not only Star Wars, but just talking movies. I'm a movie guy. I love watching. I love talking film. Just from a filmmaker aspect, some people will pick out things. If you haven't, if you want a deep dive into films, I don't mean to plug somebody else's channel, but Chris Hartwell is somebody that I got introduced to through the Schmoes, and I met with him at Star Wars Orlando, and we've been talking ever since. Just like he always comes to me about Star Wars, I always go to him for deep dive into movies, and just talking about movies with people is always great and fun. I love doing it.
No, I'm always about supporting the community, no matter who it is. I think it's great to that's how you thrive almost. But Andrew, where can the people find you besides the Schmodown?
If you're not watching me on the Schmodown, I still haven't got my next match yet, but you can find me online on Twitter at Drew Dimalanta, Dimalanta. You can also find me on YouTube by going to videosbyandrew.com. You can find Beyond the Schmodown on there. And also on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do my live Star Wars stream, Going Rogue. Talking everything Star Wars, just celebrating Star Wars is a positive place for positive fans to go to. No negativity in there. If you come in the chat and start spewing toxicity, throw you out the airlock. But you can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Andrew and Nikki, NICKI. We have 4 different tiers. We call our patrons the Squadron. I said it on every show that my dreams for the Squadron to be big enough to have a friendly rivalry with Action Army at Schmodown live events. I think that would be awesome to do that. So join us on Patreon and hashtag Squad Up.
Absolutely. All those shows that Andrew's doing right now are really good. If you are not listening to Beyond the Schmodown, you really should, because they have some really great insight. Him and Nikki are great. I enjoy the show a lot. Like I said, I heard the story with the movie list from that show, and it was great. So make sure you get over there and like those guys. Get the subscribe, like, comment, all the stuff that you're supposed to. Guys, this is the episode of The Manor, episode 3, since we rebooted everything. Malcolm, tell the people where the people can find you.
You can find me on Tape Productions hosting Late Night Take 3. This week we're talking about Pixar. You can also find me hosting Rankin. Last night we had Top 12 sports movies. And next week is going to be Dream Schmodown matches, which is going to be a really interesting topic and one that we can get very creative with very quickly.
Wonder if anybody forgot Remember the Titans on that list.
No, Remember the Titans was remembered.
Good.
The Schmodown. But one last message from Garth coming in for you, Andrew.
Thank you.
He's got you on his fantasy league. Guys, you can follow me over at Twitter at Douglas_Castle. I host The Manor. I do some shows over at Multiplex as well. I'm so excited for this show to kind of expand and grow, and we get to meet people and find out who they are without the traditional finding out who they are. I like that whole concept. It's been a blast. Enjoy your stay at The Manor, guys, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Now waiting for it.